This video is going to cover osmosis. So the first thing that we're going to look at is what osmosis is, and then we're going to look at how osmosis affects different types of cells, specifically plant cells and animal cells. So the first idea that you need to get your head around is the concept of a dilute and a concentrated solution. You've probably come across these before. So a dilute solution, you can see on the left here, has a lot of water in it. In fact, if it's pure water, it's the most dilute a solution can be. So pure water is a dilute solution. And when you dissolve things in the water, the more that you dissolve, the more concentrated the solution becomes. So in this case, on the right-hand side, you can see that the blue water has a high concentration of blue, probably food coloring in it. Okay, so we've got dilute and we've got concentrated. Now, also in a dilute solution, we say that there is a high water potential. There's a lot of water in it, basically. On the right-hand side, because there's less water, we say there is a lower water potential. Okay, so that's the first idea. So you can pause the video and have a think about this. A dilute solution, does it contain few or many solute particles and few or many water molecules in a given volume? And the answer is a dilute solution contains a few solute particles, so not very much dissolved stuff, and many water molecules. On the other hand, a concentrated solution contains many solute particles and few water molecules in its volume. So if we look on the left, the diluted solution has lots of water and not much solute. And on the right-hand side, we've got lots of solute and not much water. That's a very important idea. Now, the other key to osmosis, basically osmosis is the diffusion of water. So it's very similar to diffusion. It goes from a high water concentration to a low water concentration. But instead of calling it a water concentration, we're going to call it a water potential. So on the left-hand side, we have a high water potential. And on the right-hand side, we have a low water potential. And in the middle, this dotted line represents a cell membrane. So let's imagine that this is the outside of the cell that's got lots of water, and that this is the inside of a cell that's got lots of things dissolved in it. Now, the water can move through the gaps in the membrane to the other side, but the solute, the thing that's dissolved in the water, is too big to fit through the gaps in the membrane, so it has to stay where it is. So these particles can't go this way because they're too big to fit through the membrane, but the water particles are small enough to fit. So the water is going to try and balance out the dilution on each side of the membrane. So it's going to move from the high water potential side across the membrane to the low water potential side. It's just lower. And here we get a bit complicated, but this we can call a water potential gradient, which is the same as a concentration gradient, just with water. Okay, so essentially osmosis is the movement of water across a membrane from an area of high water potential to an area of low water potential to balance out the dilution on each side. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about the theory of osmosis. What you can do now is you can pause the video and you can look at these parts of sentences and figure out which order these bits of sentences should go in. So if you need to process this for a bit longer, just look at these sentences, put them in order. They're not full sentences, put them together to make a sentence. If not, you can carry on. Okay, so let's say we've got some animal cells, red blood cells in this case, and we could put them in one of two places. We could put them in distilled water, which it says on the left, or we could put it in a concentrated salt solution on the right. Now, distilled water has a high water potential, so the water potential will be higher than in the cells. On the other hand, if we put them in a concentrated salt solution, the salt solution will have a low water potential compared to the cells. So, if we put them in distilled water, the water will move from high water potential outside the cell to a low water potential inside the cell, and the cells will swell up and they'll burst. On the other hand, if we put it in concentrated salt solution, the water will move from a high water potential inside the cell to a lower water potential outside the cell, and the cells will shrivel up, or they'll shrink because they lose water. Okay, so if you put cells in pure water, they'll absorb the water by osmosis, and if you put them in a concentrated solution, then they will lose water by osmosis. Plant cells work in a similar way, but ever so slightly differently. So a normal plant cell, if it's in regular, like the same concentration water as the cell, it will absorb some water by osmosis, and it will also lose some water by osmosis. So it's equal. And so the cell is not swollen up and it's not shriveled up. And the word that we use for that is flaccid. So a plant cell that is gaining water and losing water at the same rate is a flaccid cell. If I put this cell in a concentrated salt solution or a concentrated anything solution, a concentrated sugar solution, then the water that's inside the cell will move out of the cell by osmosis, and all of the cytoplasm, which is the green part, the light green part, all of the cytoplasm will reduce, and the cell membrane, which is this, will suck in away from the wall. But because it has a cell wall, it keeps its overall shape, but the membrane sucks in. And that is called a plasmolyzed cell. So a plasmolyzed cell is a plant cell that has lost a lot of water. If I do the opposite and I put my plant cell into pure water, so there's a high water potential outside the cell, or higher than it is inside the cell, the water will move in by osmosis and the plant cell will swell up, and the membrane will push on the walls of the cell. It will push outwards and the cell will get all swollen up and solid, and that is called turgid. And this pressure, my screen's not working very well, this pressure is described as turgor pressure. Turgor. Sometimes people spell it without the U. Turgor pressure. So a turgid cell has the pressure of water inside it, and so it has turgor pressure. And that is all the theory that you need to understand about osmosis.